I'm with Tooling U. We're the sponsor of this track, Workforce Development. Tooling U is the leading provider of online training for manufacturers, specifically for manufacturers. We work with large global companies to help with workforce development. So if you have any interest in learning how we can help your organization, please stop by and talk to me, and we can help you out. We're pleased to have you join us for the Hoshin Planning Vision-Driven Leadership for Breakthrough Improvement. Before we get started, just standard procedures. Please turn off the sound of your phones, Blackberries. Our speaker this morning is Wes Waldo. Wes Waldo is a certified lean master with more than 15 years of quality, operations management, and process improvement experience in diverse manufacturing environments. Waldo graduated from Appalachian State University with a bachelor's in chemistry. He became a certified lean master at the Ohio State Fisher School of Business. He is also an ASQ certified quality engineer. Waldo co-authored the BMG book, A Team Leader's Guide to Kaizen Events, and is a contributor to the Idiot's Guide to Lean Six Sigma and forthcoming innovation tool book. Please help me welcome Mr. Wes Waldo.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm going to keep doing this all day. I know I find myself in a precarious situation between last night's festivities with all the imaginary gambling and the not-so-imaginary libations. You might be recovering. I hear a few of us aren't quite there yet. So I'm between that and what I hear is a very good lunch buffet. So it's you're going to be anxious to get out of here, and some of you weren't quite anxious to get in, but I'll try to make it as entertaining as possible. Unfortunately, some very recently released CIA documents show that talking about strategic planning is right there on the torture list. So, and we've been told we can't torture anymore. So, that's right, keep me safe. So, if I start getting too bad, too down in the weeds, you have to just let me know that it's becoming torture, and I'll notice that by everybody's heads hitting the table and all that. Again, my name is Wes Waldo, and I work through the Breakthrough Management Group. And we are here today to talk a little bit about this topic called Hoshin Planning. I'm not really sure how many of you are familiar with that term, so we'll get into some of the specifics of what this is. As you can imagine, this is a topic that we could spend, hours and hours and days, but instead we're going to spend just a few minutes. So we're going to hit a lot of the highlights and talk to you primarily about why you would want to use this tool, so you can actually take the opportunity, if you so desire, to go out and get some more information for yourself. So let's kind of get into it. One of the first things I like to talk about is all the reasons why you're going to say you don't need this, right? Or when you go back and talk to your organizations, they're going to say, well, we don't really need to do this. That sounds great. I'm glad you're excited about it. And it's going to be things like this. We already do that, right? We already had a strategic planning process in place, and it works just fine. Maybe you think you're going to hear that when you go back, right? How about the fact that, we'd like to do strategic planning, but we really just don't think our senior managers are going to buy into that. They like handle the control. They like to decide what's important and what's going to happen, and they kind of just tell us what to do. Does that sound familiar? Don't be bashful. They're not here, right? Yeah, I'm going to hear a lot about that. What about the fact that, I think we're probably good enough as it is. We know how to manage projects. We know how to get the right things done. We're just looking to tweak our process. We don't need anything new. You think we're going to hear some stuff like that? Yeah. Bottom line is I could list probably 8 or 10 things that I'm almost guarantee you that somebody in your organization is going to come up with for a reason not to do this. What I can tell you is that I've never seen an organization that didn't need some help or some improvement. While you might have a lot of the tools in place, it doesn't often mean that you have them structured in the right type of process to deliver the most effective results. It would be kind of like saying just because I have all the Craftsman tools in my toolbox and they're at home in my garage and I have everything that the mechanic down at the shop has, that somehow I know how to fix my car. Right? Well, I don't. Matter of fact, if I started to do that, my wife would call 3 or 4 people to come over and try to recover the car before I really got going, right? So even though we have a lot of these tools in place, it doesn't often mean that we know exactly how to use them, the right sequence, the right, who should be doing when and where. And that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. There are also a lot of symptoms that I would look for if I was going to your organization to try to figure out whether this is something that you did need. So see if any of this sounds familiar. You have too many good projects in play right now to get them all done. You hear I said too many good projects. Because a lot of people say, well, there's never enough good projects, but that's not really true, is it? Because sometimes you can have too many and you can't get them finished. How about the lead time, the delivery time on getting project work done or getting improvements made in the workplace just takes simply too long? Does that sound familiar? Right? You know, these concepts of Kaizens, instead of being done in a week, end up taking 3 months. You're going like, I thought this was supposed to be a Kaizen event. It turned into like a Kaizen ordeal. You know, how do we get that? What about having too many bad projects? You know, like how do these bad projects or these things that really don't going to deliver the results that we need, why are we spending time and resources on them? What about having your organization to where the people on the shop floor, the point of action resources are doing a lot of good things, but the senior manager looks at it and goes, how come that doesn't match what I want them to do? Or how come they get all this stuff done, but yet we're not moving the needle in the direction that we told everybody we were going to do? Does that seem to happen every once in a while? Yeah, you know, we use a magic word we call alignment. We don't really have good alignment. What about some of your resources that feel like they're not involved in the decision-making process? Any of you ever feel that way? Like all of a sudden your boss calls you in and says, here's what we're going to start doing tomorrow, and you're looking at it like, well, where did that come from? You know, what's that got to do with anything? You know, you ever felt that way? Yeah. So there's lots of these symptoms that are out there that tells me that maybe you don't have quite the right kind of process in place to get the entire organization involved and aligned to the strategic direction that you're headed. And that's what we're going to talk about today. That's what Hoshin Planning really is all about. So if you bear with me, we're going to just hit the highlights today. And, of course, there should be about 10 or 15 minutes at the end of this for us to ask questions in here. And then I was asked to actually go downstairs. There's some kind of breakout room down there for speakers. And if you want a little bit more information, I'll be down there after the talk as well. This term Hoshin Planning, it is a Japanese word. A lot of people call it strategic planning. Some people call it policy deployment. It really just depends on what your background is. To me, honestly, it's not that important, and we'll actually talk about what this word means in a second. But basically what we're talking about is a tool that's used to facilitate the development of processes that if you do these right, you execute these in an organization, it's going to sustain a competitive advantage in everything you do, whether it's quality, delivery, cost, productivity, innovation. The goal is to turn what you already have going and make it better, and actually make it better in such a way that you're the leading your industry. You're somebody that's super competitive that people are starting to chase instead of you chase them. It has at its core a 7-step process that we're going to get into, but there's a couple key terms that I'll use multiple times over this short time we have together, like the concept of driving alignment. It's one of the key reasons why you would put a Hoshin planning process in place is so that every member of your organization has the chance to participate, and they know what you're trying to do, and they know where you're trying to go, and they know how they contribute to that plan. And we do that through a process we call catch-ball, which allows managers and supervisors and point-of-action resources to some extent get involved in creating that plan. And you're going to be amazed at how much your sustainability factors are going to start to go up, how much your lead times are going to start to come down. I call it adding speed to your organization through your planning process, and that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to use words like vision every once in a while, and I think that's kind of an abused word, but basically what we're talking about, if you were doing value stream mapping, this would be the ideal state, right? This is where you're trying to get to. It doesn't mean you're going to get there tomorrow. It may take you 5 years or 10 years, but you have to have some idea of where you're heading. Do you think that's important in an organization? It absolutely is, and a lot of organizations have vision and mission statements on the wall. And if you go and read them, it's almost impossible for the members of that organization to get attached to it. They can't even see what it is you're talking about. They don't recognize that as the organization that they work for, and they certainly don't see a lot of evidence of anybody working towards that. Would you agree? So if you do that and you post up 50 posters everywhere and you have an announcement party and you put logos and everybody's got the card in their back pocket, all right, does this sound like you? But nobody ever knows it. They don't. And you even do this point, right? Anybody ever been through an ISO audit? Yeah, most of you have. And do you have everybody memorizing the quality policy? Right? Well, the strategic version of that is everybody memorizing the mission statement, right? So all the managers tell the supervisors, and supervisors tell the pay, hey, if the big boss comes through, you got to be able to quote this thing, so let's get it close. Well, that's not what we're talking about here. That's not the deployment that we're looking for. That's not the alignment. What we actually want to do is create a vision that people can really rally behind, something that's real important to them. We want to look at things that we call breakthrough type objectives. We're not going to use this process to just clean up, daily problems and issues. This is not how you're going to manage firefighting on the floor. And I think everybody knows what I mean when I say firefighting. When we talk about something that's breakthrough, we are going to come up with some kind of process improvement that today we really don't know exactly how we're going to accomplish it, because we might have to put a whole new process in place just to make ourselves function that way. It's going to be something that's radical. It might drive us a new organizational competency. We don't know exactly how it's going to occur, but we know that if we do put this new process in place, we do make this change in our organization, it's really going to change our position in the workforce. It's really going to change our position in the industry. And that's what we're striving for. And I'll give you some examples of that in a second. This word Hoshin is really the most important of these objectives. It's the 2 or 3 or 4 at the most that we're going to concentrate on year in, year out to really push our organization where it needs to go. The word Hoshin actually came, of course, it's a Japanese word. Some of the original people that did it was in the Kobe shipyards in Bridgestone. It actually was 4 words at one time, 4 Japanese words, the Hoshin Kanri, and those rough translation is shiny metal pointing direction. Anybody knows what that is? It's a compass, exactly. So a Hoshin, if you want to look at it, is actually a compass or a compass heading. And anybody that's ever been on a camping trip or a long hike knows that I'm trying to get from point A to point B, but I can very seldom ever do that in a direct line. I'm going to have to make some zigs and zags. I'm going to have to go left for a little while and then come back to the right. But what happens is if you don't periodically stop and check your compass heading, you could get lost. Right? You can get a long way from where it is you're trying to head. And the Hoshin planning process sets out there for us, here's where we're trying to get to, here's the compass heading that we want to be on, and every month, every week, every day, we're going to make some heading corrections. We're going to look and see, are we really headed where we're supposed to be? We're going to let these Hoshins give us guidance, and, as far as the direction. Now, how we get there may be different. Right? Depends on what kind of mountain we're trying to climb. Depends on what kind of valley we're going through. Are we in snow country or are we in the middle of the desert? Depending on what kind of process you're putting in place, the how could be vastly different. But it's the where part that's really important at this stage. And the Hoshin tells us a lot about where we're going. Okay? So, if you look at what we're trying to do, we are trying to align the entire organization. If you consider your organization a sum of 4 parts, strategy, systems, processes, and the people, you really can't afford to leave any of those out. Now, as manufacturers, we tend to focus most heavily on what? All right, I heard somebody say people. I heard more people say the process. The results. Okay, yeah. We definitely don't want to, we're not in it for fun, are we? We're here to turn a dollar. I think, in my opinion, is most people work on their systems and their processes. I think it's very easy to go out and launch a Kaizen event that reduces scrap or improves the lead time or makes something safer. Would you agree with that? But we don't often say, we're going to do a Kaizen event because we're going to improve the conditions of our workplace to make our people happier. Now, the HR guys in the room are like, yeah, we should do more of that. That's what we should do. But we don't often do that. And we don't often spend a lot of time with the people at Point of Action talking about the overall strategy of the organization and where they fit in. Would you agree with that? So what we've got to do is we can't leave those elements out, because the minute you start leaving the strategy piece out, then you're going to find out that you're kind of doomed to repeat a lot of cycles over and over again. You ever solve the same problem more than once? Well, guess what? You didn't solve it, right? You're coming back for a second dip. We want to try to eliminate that. So part of what we got to do is we got to get more people involved, and we got to make sure that the work that those people are doing are connected to their strategy, so that we do get those results that we're talking about. We have the sustained profitability. We have customer employee satisfaction. We have that growth and innovation that we're striving for, and that's really the main purpose. When we go to do work with an organization, whether it's a green field or a brown field, it doesn't make any difference. We try to stress that there's a roadmap. And with PE, performance excellence, how are you going to improve the way your organization functions? And when we first get started, everybody wants to get started right here in the middle. Where it goes? Right here in the execute and enable phase. Right? They don't want to do the first part, because they feel, you know what, we're in a crisis, we need to save money, we've got to make some improvements in a hurry, or we don't get the product out the door, so let's just run Kaizens, or let's just do DMAIC, or let's just make some quick improvements. Does that sound familiar? Do most of you get tasked the same way? And the problem is that you do a little bit of enablement, maybe teaching people how to do it. So that's how our key to sustainability is everybody understands how to do Kaizen, or they knew how to do 5S or visual management. But the problem is when you skip to the middle of the process, you might not be designing with the ideal state in mind. You could be sub-optimizing. Matter of fact, that happens quite a bit. Or you find that you have to come back and repeat things. Or you find that it's not sustainable at all. And what we try to encourage organizations is if you don't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it over? I know your moms told you this when you were growing up, right? Am I going to get your moms in here to? So what we need to do is focus a little bit more on the front end. Can we assess the organization and find out where you are culturally? Can we find out where your competition is? What is it that you really need to be looking at 5 or 10 years from now? And some people go, so this is when the next complaints. Well, you know what? I got no idea what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone what my competition is going to do 3 years from now. Does that sound familiar? Especially in today's economy. Well, one of the issues is that, you know what? Maybe what I want is the competition to worry about where I'm going, not me worrying about where they're going all the time. It actually takes a lot less energy and a lot less resources to be the person in front than to be the person constantly chasing and trying to keep up. So we want to spend time in this plan and design phase, which is a lot where we see Hoshin Planning really taking over. It's the bridge between where your organization is and the types of work that you're going to do to get it to where you need it to be. And we got to create that solid plan. If I can get this to go. So some key themes to Hoshin Planning. Well, the first one is that really the only way to predict the future is to create it, to be in charge of growing your company in the direction that you want it to go. Instead of constantly worrying about what everybody else is doing, can you make them worry about yourself? The fact that you can put some prevention plans in place, stop loss, but the bottom line is that doesn't always equate to creating new opportunities or growth. Prevention sometimes is just too docile. How do we get ahead of the curve? If everything is a priority, then nothing is. Right? If I'm working on 200 things and I really only have the capacity to get 50 of them done well, I'm not making progress at all. It's Little's Law, right? It's too much inventory to try to control all this stuff. And matter of fact, if I do get them all done, chances are the quality is not what it needs to be. So we need to figure out a way. If you look at the Hoshin Planning process, some people say it's a process to go and select all the things that we're going to work on. I actually challenge that logic. I think Hoshin Planning is a deselection process. It's going to take a lot of ideas that may be very good, and we're saying, you know what, these are the ones we're not going to work on because we simply don't have the time, material, resources to make them all happen. It's about leveraging those resources. If you're in an organization right now and you're a manager, a department manager, or a GM, or a supervisor, and you've got 30 employees for every member of management, and you're wondering, why am I so busy? Why am I doing all the work? Well, I had the same question back at you. Why are you doing it that way? Why can't we leverage all the employees in your organization? What I like to tell folks, especially if we're doing a Kaizen event, is chances are everybody gets worried about the solution piece. Well, what am I going to change? What am I going to fix? Most of the time, we find out that the solution is already known by somebody in your organization. It's just asking the right person the right question. And they're dying for you to ask them that question. Would you agree with that? They want you to go out and ask them that question. Well, why would strategy be any different? Why would coming up with a game plan really be a whole lot different? Now, you say, well, I don't want a million of these crazy ideas from all these people. They don't understand the business. They don't understand what's going on. Well, why is that? Why don't they understand the nature of your business or what's going on? So we want to try to leverage as many people as possible. And we call it making visible your moon. Now, the classic Hoshin example that people talk about at this point in time is the whole John F. Kennedy experience with NASA and putting somebody on the moon, right? In the beginning of the 60s, he basically went before the nation. He said, by the end of the decade, we're going to do what? Right, and then he had to revise that statement. It wasn't just put a man on the moon. We also had to do what? Bring them back. That's how he got the astronauts involved, right? Because they weren't so excited about just being stuck, And so, yeah, he said, look, we're going to put him in. And at that time, did he have any idea how he was going to do it? He just knew that the Russians were beating our pants, right? I mean, they were putting stuff in orbit all the time and putting dogs up there and cats and whatever else they were putting up there. They were orbiting the Earth, and they were sending satellites up. And what were most of our rockets doing at that time? Again, a problem for who? the astronauts, it's like, wait a minute. First you weren't going to bring me back, and now what you're going to stick me on is blowing up like a Roman candle the 4th of July. This is not a real good idea. So he had no idea how his equipment was going to work. He didn't have people that necessarily wanted to be involved in this. But, he had a lot of breakthroughs that had to occur for him to actually do it. Did he have any idea whether 8.5 years was long enough to make it happen? No, he had no idea. So do you think he went around the room and talked to 25 of his senior leaders and technical advisors and said, do you think this is a good idea? Not a chance. He didn't do any of that. He basically just said, we are going to make this happen, come high water, right? And we're going to figure it out. We're going to put the processes in place. We're going to get the right people in place. He had to create entire agencies like NASA didn't exist. They didn't have NASA back then. It wasn't like there was this whole team of scientists he could point to and said, I know you haven't been doing anything for the last 50 years. Now here's what you're going to be doing. He had to put all those guys together. So that made it a breakthrough. That made it a true Hoshin because it gave us a compass. And it was something that was very important because it was something, you talk to your grandparents and your parents and yourselves and think about where you were doing when this stuff started happening, right? You see the TV. People remember, this is, where they were when, John Glenn did this or, when Alan Shepard did that. I mean, they know all that stuff. And that was important because we needed something as a country to really pull us together. And so it was more than just a technical issue. There was some society at large needed some help. And it really wasn't very popular. He chose between putting a man on the moon by the end of the year or, like, killing all the Russians. It just was hard to put a plaque in your home that says, kill a Russian today. Right? That didn't make a lot of sense. But what he could get people excited about was some technology superiority, right? But that was a race that we could participate in and feel good when we won. We were the first one to do this or the next one to do that. And what it also gave you opportunity was, were they going to be the were we the first country to put somebody in space? No, we weren't, were we? We weren't the first person to put a rocket up there or a satellite or anything. So what did he have to do to make this breakthrough? He had to jump shift, right? He had to say, he didn't go, I'm going to do a benchmarking survey, right? He didn't say, well, I'm going to go see the top 3 space programs, and I'm going to make sure that in 3 years from now I'm all caught up with them, right? Because if he had done that, would he ever put somebody on the moon before the Russians? No, they would have beat him, right? Because they would have kept developing it at the same pace. So he had to leap past where they were and say, you know what, we're going to zoom right past our competition, and we're going to go to be the best. We're going to put somebody on the moon. We've got no idea how to do that. And that's what a Hoshin is. Today, I think the modern equivalent is probably going to end up being something around alternative energy, right? Somebody somewhere is going to figure out the same way that Kennedy did. He's going to say, you know what? We're not going to just do any one particular thing, and we're not going to have a divisive issue. We're going to figure out how to get everybody, coalesced on this thing, and we're going to say 10 years from now, here's where we're going to be. And all the guys are going to say, well, you got no idea. The technology can't, and you're going to go, we didn't know how to put anybody on the moon, right? We didn't know how to do it before. So why would we be less inclined to take that kind of a risk today? We're going to have to make that happen. I really think that's a modern-day Hoshin that we're going to see the United States eventually, if we can get some of our political woes behind us, we'll take on. This is what Hoshin's about. Driving an organization's vision not around the problems of today, the constraints that we have in front of us, but where do we need to be? How do we put systems in place that make these targets really tangible, something that we can actually see how we're going to do, and create that alignment across all the functions in an organization? How do I get supervision working with HR, working with accounting, working with engineering, working with product design? How do I make sure everybody is focused around the same type of goal and objective so we don't have any wasted energy and wasted resources? We call it driving smart wedges. We're going to create height in the organization. We're going to create some distance between us and the next guy, but we're going to have to do it together as a team. One of the things you're going to get out of Hoshin Planning is it really fosters a lot of learning, because the only way to get people involved is to get them learning parts of their organization that they've never seen before. And you know what? This is not very uncommon to a lot of things you already do with Lean, right? And one of the advantages of doing Kaizen event or some good value stream mapping is you learn parts of the organization that maybe you haven't spent time in before, and you're able to say, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was having that impact on my customer, or I didn't realize because of the way I was asking for something, this is what I was doing to my supplier. Right? Hoshin Planning is not going to be any different than that to give us that kind of value. It has a continuous loop to it. Planning never quite ends. You're always not quite at the beginning. You're somewhere in the process all the time. Have you ever had this problem occur where your 2007 strategy had absolutely nothing to do with your 2008 strategy? And you're looking around going, wait a minute, we didn't quite finish all that other stuff, and now you want us to start a whole new pile. And the answer from your boss was, well, get that stuff done too, but you also got to start working on this new stuff. Does that sound familiar? right? And you know, the only thing that changed was the final number on the calendar. It went from 2008 to 2009, and it was only about 12 minutes difference, but yet somehow your whole game plan for your company changed overnight. This is what we're going to do in 2009, and 2008 is kind of behind us, and you're going like, why? Why isn't the strategy connected? Why isn't our planning connected year on year? One of the goals of Hoshin Planning is to have that continuous process going to where there's nothing different just because the calendar date changes. We're actually continuing on in the same direction that we're going. That's very important. Catchball, of course, is getting everybody involved. What do we mean by that? Well, the very important part is when the senior management comes up with maybe the Hoshins, the top-level view of what they want to do. And instead of taking it right then and then driving right down to the organization, all the other sub-steps that need to happen, all the other activities, all the other projects that would support that, what they do is they stop at that moment in time and say, okay, here I think is the strategic direction that we need to go. Let's see what the other folks think about this. And we use the term socialize. They socialize that idea. They inform, say, hey, look, guys, here's what we're thinking about doing. We think this makes sense. What do you think? And then actually give them a chance. In other words, don't give it to them on Friday morning and say, we got to know by Monday, what you think about this, right? So this takes a little bit of time. And you know what? When those guys come back and say, you gave us 4 ideas, I think 3 of them are pretty good with these small changes, but this one down here doesn't make a lot of sense. What if you turned it into this? Then we got to start being respectful of that. And what happens is you massage those ideas just enough to where you can get the buy-in from everybody. And then you move down to the next level. And you say, okay, well, how are we going to make that happen? Well, here's what we think we need to do, right? And now the middle managers are more involved. And once they come up with their ideas a little bit, who are they going to talk to? Their folks, right? And they're going to keep going back and forth. And you know what? They're going to start to transform these ideas a little bit, and that's going to have to be floated back up. And you see, it's like playing a game of catch. We're going to do constant, instead of it being this real straight line where I start here and I blast all the way to there from beginning to end to get it done in 2 weeks, it's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of back and forth. It sounds like waste, but it's not, because it's playing catch, if you will, with the right people. You're getting everybody on the team. You're getting everybody involved. And what we're driving for is at the end of this, we're going to have a plan that everybody's already going to be very intimate with. So it's not going to be one of these things. You ever had an issue? How many of you guys roll like objectives on an annual basis? Most of you? So if you're not raising your hand, you don't have annual objectives? I've run into that before, that's true. So if a lot of guys will either roll it like calendar year or physical year, but most of the time it's January. Everybody gets their new objectives in January. How many of you actually get the objectives in January? Right? How many of you actually get your 2009 objectives in like March? Or maybe how many of you are hoping that when you get back, you're going to actually have your 2009 objective, right? That happens a lot, right? And why is that? Because you're so busy trying to clean up the mess for 2008 that you really don't even have a plan, a really strategy for how I'm going to make 2009 somewhat better. You have all the good intentions. It's not a competence thing. It's not anybody doesn't want to do it. It's just it tends to happen that way. But if you get more and more people involved and you treat it as a continuous cycle instead of something that happens every year, but in a very discrete period of time, you're going to find that's going to start to go away. So then in December, everybody actually already has their objectives for 2009 or 2010, and they already are intimate with them. They're not reading them for the first time on January 1st and then figuring out how they're going to do it. They're already ramping up to make it happen. And that's where we're trying to go with catchballs. Does that sound interesting? Yeah, I thought it was the first time. And, of course, we talked about the ideal state of working backwards from perfection. Here's something that it's not. It's not the classic management by objective that we had for a lot of the 80s. So what do I mean by that? I'm not going to go through this whole table, but quite often management by objective was only concerned with the result. If I said I was going to make a 40% reduction in scrap, did I make it happen? If I was going to make a 25% productivity gain, did I make it happen? And it often did not matter what kind of process you put in place, what procedures you put in place, as long as the net effect of the result right then and there was okay. But we also recognize now that you can put in bad processes that yield at a moment in time good results, but a year from now that same process does not yield a consistent result. Would you agree with that? And what we tend to do is say, well, you know what? The world's changed, our culture's changed, the product's changed a little bit, so now that process just doesn't work anymore, right? Most of the time, that's not the reason. The reason is because the process itself really wasn't the right process. It wasn't robust. It wasn't what it needed to be. And we didn't take the time to put a right process in place because we didn't worry about the process being right. We worried about the result being right. And what we want to do with Hoshin Planning is we actually want to work on perfecting those business processes so that you get the same result in a very consistent fashion year in, year out. And if you have to modify that process because you need a new result, a different product has to be produced or in a different timeline. Now, since you have a stable process that's been repeatable, it's a lot easier to change. Would you agree with that? The hardest process in the world to change accurately is the one that's got so much variation in it that you don't know whether the change you're making is really going to have the impact that you suspect it will, right? So that we want to put business processes in place. So it's not, for us, Hoshin Planning is more about not the result, is about the process we put in place. And if you put the right process in place, the result's going to be guaranteed. And that's where we're headed with that. You see where I'm going with that one? Everybody thinking about the cruise ship last night? I see a couple of you wondering like, man, oh, jeez. All right. Now, also, another distinction that I want to make is the distinction between managing these Hoshins, these breakthrough objectives, and your daily management process. Because you need both. And matter of fact, as part of the ongoing strategy that we use, we will monitor both at the same time, but they are not indeed the exact same thing. And let me give you an example. How many of you would be very accepting of me if I gave you advice that says something like this? You don't need to worry about safety anymore. Okay, 2 people raise your hand. No. Okay. No, I don't think any of you would accept that. If I was in your industry, we would take a look around and we would say, okay, how safe are you? How many recordable injuries do you have? Have you had fatalities? How many first aids? Now, a lot of you may be very good. You may actually, in the a STAR program. You may not have, you haven't had a recordable in 3 years, but and you're very active. And we might say, you know what? You don't really need any breakthrough type objectives, but you're going to constantly work on safety a little bit. You're going to have a safety manager or an officer, and you'll do programs and monthly training. That's part of now. It's been rendered to your daily management process, right? Because you're just trying to make sure that you stay as good as you are and maybe get a little bit better each year, because you always want to get just a little bit better. But let's say, and I'm not trying to pick on any industry, but let's say you worked in the logging industry. Do you think they might have some safety issues? I mean, the perception is they do. I've never studied the data, so I don't know for a fact. But the perception is that it's an unsafe. They tend to have fatalities. They tend to have a lot of injuries. Well, maybe somebody in the logging industry said, you know what? We're going to do something breakthrough. We had, 30 recordable injuries this year. That's unacceptable. In 3 years' time, we're going to go from 30 down to 1. You think that would be a breakthrough for them? Yeah, you think they know how they would do that? They probably got no idea. But some company might say, you know what, in 3 years we just got to make this happen. And maybe for them, if they actually do that and they can demonstrate over the course of 2 or 3 years that where the rest of the industry is sitting at 20 recordables a year and they're at 1, do you think they're going to start to attract the best employees? I mean, that's who I'd want to work for, right? I wouldn't want to go to work for the logging company that was profitable, but at the same time, I came home every night, and I, didn't have to make so many trips to the hospital. And that would be a breakthrough objective for them. So you can see that same topic of safety could either be on the daily management side of the ledger or it could be on the breakthrough side. Now, let's take that same example. I think I'm in the logging industry, and I do it. I accomplish that. I put in business processes in place. I put in, whatever it is. It's going to be some mechanical change out in the field about how I handle the logs. It's going to be how I, treat the employees. It's going to be the training that we do, how we set up the workspace. Lots of things could happen over the course of those 3 years to get that recordable injury rate down. Once I've put those things in place, where do I want to move it to? I want to move it from that side of the ledger, the breakthrough side, and I want to move it to daily practice, right? I want it to be sustainable. I want to make sure if I really create a business process that's sustainable, it should become part of my daily habit. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to go out and grab the next breakthrough. And that's why I say it may take you 2 or 3 years to render that to practice. And then when you finally have done that, it finally comes off your Hoshin and you put it into your daily practice, and then you go grab the next thing. And that's what you've got to do. In your business, you've got to go find those 2 or 3 Hoshins that are going to make a big difference. It's going to change the way you do business. And your goal is to render that to daily practice. Does that kind of resonate? I mean, that's what we're trying to do. That's what Hoshin is really all about. The rest of it, honestly, just gets in some of the tactics. And this, to me, is somewhat less important. It's the part that's the easiest to get across. It's the part the easiest to show people how to do. So I'm going to go through this last part of it, fairly quickly. There is a 7-step process that we go through. The beginning starts with creating that vision of the organization, that ideal state of who you want to be. We break it down into what number 2 is your strategic goals. There's 2 to 3 or 4 year Hoshins that are out there. There's a couple that you're going to do. Like I want to be, have 1 recordable in the logging industry, and you start to you coalesce on what those things are going to be, and then you have to actually deploy, figure out in smaller increments what is it that I'm going to do. Because you can imagine if I give somebody a 5-year horizon, I said 5 years from now, you're going to put a man on the moon. and I don't know how I'm going to do it, you got to start breaking that down into manageable chunks. What am I going to do year 1? What am I going to do year 2, year 3? And those chunks, are going to be related to the same overall goal, but they may have a lot of differences from year to year on the kind of work that you're doing. We have to deploy those annual objectives. We have to get everybody in our organization involved, pulling the wagon in the same direction. So we're going to deploy them down. And as you deploy them down, you come up with more specific initiatives, the more specific projects. Literally, what kind of process improvements are going to make? How much change am I going to implement? We're going to review this stuff on a regular basis. We're going to use our lean tools like value stream mapping and Kaizen, visual management. It's all part of the process. Every month we're going to get together and talk about how much progress we're making, but there's also going to be daily meetings and weekly meetings. Now, is this on top of what you're already doing? No. We're going to take a lot of the things that you're already doing as an organization, and we're just going to transform them a little bit. Remember, you've got that Craftsman toolbox in your garage. We're just going to pull it out, and we're going to say you don't need all 75 tools. Maybe you just need these 5 or 6, and then here's the batting order that we'd like to see you start to use them in. And next thing you know, your car's going to be fixed. So what does that look like? The 3 to 5 year Hoshins, or we call that the what. We're going to look and see what's your current state, where's your competition, but also where is world class? Because remember, if all I do is target the competition, would we ever have beat the Russians to the moon? No. In other words, I want to go, what is world class? Where am I really striving for? What am I going to come up with? Now, do you think I can pick 10 of these things to go make them happen? No. If on day 1 of that week, if on Monday, Kennedy had stood up and said, we're going to put a man on the moon and bring him back. Thank you for playing along. Appreciate that. The astronauts appreciate that too. We're going to put a man on the moon. We're going to bring him back, right? And then everybody said, wow, I don't know how we're going to do it, but I'm excited about that. That's great, right? Okay, we can get excited about that. And the Tuesday morning, he stood up and goes, you know what? I'm really worried about us running out of real estate, so we're going to build a city under the water. Right, we're going to get in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and we're going to revive Atlantis. And people are going to go, gee, okay, all right. That's, I don't know how we're going to do that either, but, And then if he started doing that every day of the week, and he just gave them a new one, right, here's what we're going to do, right? We're going to teach people how to fly, like on their own. We're going to do that by the end of the decade. And eventually, you're going to get tired of that, wouldn't you think? As a matter of fact, you probably are going to think that the very first one that you were so excited about on Monday probably isn't even going to happen. Would you agree with that? You're going to go, first of all, we can't do everything. Does this ever sound familiar? Anybody read the newspaper lately? Right? We can't do everything, so we got to pick the 2 or 3 things that really are important to get them done, and get them done now. Not that those other things weren't important, not that we didn't need to do it, it's just you can't do everything at once. And when we get to this point in time, we got to really pick, we got to really hone in on the things that are going to make the biggest difference, and we'll have to maybe set some of these other good ideas aside. And that's super important. Once we understand what these 5-year goals, these Hoshins are going to be, again, you break them down into those annual objectives. How far are we going to get in this year toward accomplishing the goal? It looks a little bit like this. And we went in the first year to get as much of that gap closed as possible. Why do we do most of it in the first year instead of the out years? Somebody said it's easier. It's important to create that sense of urgency with people to say, you know what, we're not going to wait till the tail end of this thing to show all the improvement. Because if you get to that 3rd year and you're expecting 75% of the improvement to occur and then it doesn't, what have you just squandered? Time. And can you get time back? That's the one resource you can't get back. You can go hire more people, you can make more money, you can buy more widgets, you can do all this other stuff, but once you've lost a day, it's gone. You cannot get it back. So we have to make sure that we're driving to get the most amount of improvement early on that we possibly can. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. It just depends on what you're working on, but we want people to see that. It's, again, I hate to pick on the politicians of the world, but it's those classic guys who are only going to be in office 8 years, and they always give you a 10-year plan, right? The first thing they do is they show you a 10-year plan, and most of the improvement occurs when? The last 3 years, when they're not even going to be around. And I'm amazed at that. But, we do it all the time. And a lot of us give plans the same way, right? So we kind of put this on its ear. We say, we want to do most of the improvement up front. What might it look like? We use a simple Excel spreadsheet format that'll start to populate things and carry it out. But basically, at the bottom of this thing, you can see it. Some people call it a PD matrix or strategy matrix or an X matrix. It's real complicated in Lean, right? X matrix. At the bottom, we have the 3 to 5 year Hoshins, these breakthrough things that are going to happen. Over here on the side, we have the annual objectives. So how far am I going to get this year? At the top, we start to getting more specific. how are we actually going to accomplish these things? And as you can see, as you start to work your way around the wheel, the line items start to add up. There are more things that get done because we get more specific. But we also assign them to who are all the resources that are going to work on these things. How are we going to measure it? The metric part is super important. We got to create the right way to monitor this stuff on a monthly basis. And a lot of people kind of can get hung up on that because some of these projects that we start to want to work on, some of these ideas, we don't have a good metric system for it. And we either try to force fit existing metrics on it or we kind of bail out and don't measure it at all. And that's a mistake because you need to find a way to demonstrate progress. And on a monthly basis, it's important to figure that out. What's also important about this is we start to assign resources. People start to figure out in a hurry that you got 3 guys doing all the work. Does that ever happen in your organizations? Right? You keep going to the same 2 people to do all the work. The Pareto principle is alive and well. Right? And what we need to show is that I need to get everybody involved. I need to get the rest of the organization involved. So I'm going to actually find out who's doing the work, who's not, and how do I get other people involved. So I say who's primarily responsible, who's going to help them out. These are the people that are responsible for the plan. Now what's interesting about this is like this particular chart is done at the highest level. So say you're in a factory, the person's name that's at the bottom is the plant manager, the general manager, right? And she's at the bottom, and those are her direct reports, and she's saying, this is what we need to get done this year in this facility to make our goals happen. But you know what? There's a lot more people that have to get involved in that, right? So what do? We actually deploy. This is deploying the objectives. So on the top level, the one we just saw, we have a chart. We call it a bowling chart. And again, in Lean, we're real complicated, right? You can X matrix, bowling chart, kind of looks like bowling lanes. This is where we show on a month-to-month basis the progress that we're making against those metrics. We actually forecast and we say, here's what we're going to do in January, February, March, and we're going to look every month. Did we make it or not make it? If we made it, how much time do you think we're going to spend on that? Not a whole lot. If we didn't make it, we're not going to beat each other up about all the million reasons why Fred didn't do what he was supposed to do. We're going to figure out what's our game plan to go forward to get back on track. And we're never going to be more than 10 or 15 or 30 days away from understanding what's it going to take to get back on track. But then what we also do is we take these goals and objectives that are up here and we roll them down to the next level. So if I'm a plant manager and I have 6 department managers working for me, each one of them will have their own second level matrix. And they'll take the parts of the objectives up here that they're responsible for and they'll roll them down and they'll come up with their own more specific objectives that they're going to do to make them accomplished. And who are the resources going to be on this side? Their supervisors or their managers, and they're going to see specifically what they're working on and how it contributes all the way up the food chain. Now, what gets really interesting in this is when you've got a company that's got 10 sites and you've got a senior VP of manufacturing that wants something done across all the sites, this is how you actually start to bring all the sites together as well. Because the top level wouldn't be the general manager for a plant, it would be the senior vice president for the organization. The second level would be the plant manager, and the next level would be those department managers. But what they'll always be able to see is what actions are being done to support these objectives, to make them happen throughout the whole organization. Recently, we finished installing this in a large pharmaceutical company. I mean, a $50 billion company. And when the president of the division took to his last review with the president of the company 20 sheets of paper that summarized everything that this $5 billion company was doing, because it can be summarized in such a concise fashion. And they're like, wow, okay, this really makes sense. They've never seen that kind of clarity before. We have certain things we call action plans, of course, which will get into the details of what's happening. An example of this that's important is that in the action plan, let me back up for a second, you'll notice that each one of these lines represent a month. Those months correlate with the months on the bowling chart. I'm always fascinated when people put action plans together and they start doing some forecasting and you think, we're going to make a tremendous improvement come about May, right? That's when we're really going to see the tide turn on this scrap issue or the safety issue that we're working on. We're like, okay, great. And I'll say, show me all the action plans that feed into this strategic objective. And I'm looking to see in these action plans where all this work is going to be done prior to May. And when I totally, tally them all up and I see that none of the work is going to happen before May, I start asking questions. How are you actually going to see a fundamental shift in your metric if none of the work is going to happen before then, right? It happens, but if you don't ever have an opportunity to match all those plans up with specific goals and objectives, if all you have is a personal development plan that shows a high-level quarterly objective that you don't review but every 3 months, right, and that you didn't get until March or April that's supposed to start in January, right? How do you ever get ahead of this, right? How do you ever actually make this happen? So it's a fundamental shift in where we're trying to take people. We want those point of action resources to fundamentally be working on the things that are important to the overall organization, okay? And how is that important to some of you guys? How many of you have anything related to your title, the word continuous improvement, right? Yeah, and that's usually the reason why you're here, right? And how many of you have a problem where you feel like, and it might have happened from day one, or it might have happened 2 years in or 3 years in, where a lot of the continuous improvement projects you're working on don't seem to tie into anything. You're doing it, you're excited about it, but you're the only one, right? You can't get a department manager excited about it, you can't get a plant manager excited about it, you go in and show them this neat thing, and you get a whole lot of so what. Does that sound familiar? If it hadn't happened to you yet, it's going to. Right? You tell them about it at lunch, right? Because that's what's going to happen. And because I've seen it a million times. I've had it happen to me. One of the things we have to do is continuous improvement. And we don't understand. We're stunned, right? Because we're looking at these methodologies and we're saying, this will save the world. Would you agree with that? I mean, we're going like, man, how could you do it any other way? Why would you do anything else? Why would you not do this, right? It doesn't make sense. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, part of it's our problem because we haven't tied the continuous improvement work back to the strategy. We haven't found a fundamental way to every single day convince these managers that the things that they need to be working on, we're not going to tell them, here's the project you should be doing. We're going to say, tell us what project you need help with. Right? So I want a copy of this. I want a copy of their Hoshin plan, and I want to find out what kind of things they have on their action items. I want to see how important these things are so that we can see fundamentally how we need to be supporting them as continuous improvement professionals. We want to create that concept of pull, right? We want to pull from the organization. We want them to call us and say, how can you come and help us? We want some help. This is an example of just how a breakthrough objective might be broken down for the different departments. When we get to this point of creating these action plans, this is where tools like value stream mapping really come into place. Because we want to say, what are the strategic Kaizen events that need to be done to make process improvements? What are some of the lean tools that need to happen? And we can see where we're doing a value stream mapping at the same time we're creating our strategic plan. Those things are going to eventually collide. When somebody says, here's what we need to have happen, how are you going to make it work? And you're going to say, well, I just happen to have these 3 or 4 value stream maps that I've already done to tell me the things that need to occur. If you want this to happen, here are the things I need to pull off the map. If you want something else to happen, I need to pull these other things off the map. And eventually they start to collide at the right place. A couple more slides. You got to have some kind of process in place that regularly feeds the pipeline. If you're in a situation right now where you're doing continuous improvement and you don't know what the next Kaizen event is going to be, or the next DMAIC project, you can't seem to find a good one, you don't know exactly what you need to be doing, you don't have this process in place. Because if you don't have a heady pipeline right now, you don't have so many good ideas that they're tripping over themselves, then something's broken, I'm going to tell you, because you know your plant's not working perfect. You know you're not so good that a process improvement is not necessary, so you need to have some kind of sustainment cycle in place. Again, this is reviewed on a monthly basis. The entire team gets together. They see, where are we at with our KPIs, where are we at with, our strategic metrics that we have for our breakthrough, things that are on track. We don't spend as much time talking about things that are behind. We spend most of our time working on it. We call it the 80-20 rule. We're going to spend about 20-30% of our time looking at the historical focus. Most of the time in these meetings, we spend time working on what we're going to do proactively. What kind of countermeasures do we need to put in place? We use a lot of A3 planning. I know we had a good session on that just yesterday. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that, but we want very concise report outs. We want things to happen in a crisp manner, so you're not spending all day in the meetings talking about it. You're actually spending most of your time out in the Gemba doing the work itself. Okay? And then, of course, at the end of the process, we have this thing called an annual review, the last step, whereas what we actually do is say, how well did we do with Hoshin Planning? How well did this work? Because it's just like any other tool that's management-driven, you're going to get better at it. The more you use it, the more time you spend on it. Next year will be better, and the following year will be better as well. You're going to get a copy of this presentation. There's lots of things at the end that kind of just summarize the points that we've talked about, so I won't read these slides to you, but you can take a chance to look at those for yourself. And I think we got a chance for some question and answer session right now. So any questions, anything I can help you with? Yeah.
We have been exposed to the goal deployment process, and I noticed that it is more or less the same as you are presenting here. So I'm wondering, what would you say that is different between, the GDP goal deployment process and Hoshin Planning?
The GDP?
Goal deployment process, yeah.
Okay. Well, see, remember what you said, what was the first objection I told you people would come up with? We already do that. See, I'm omniscient there, right? No, he's a plan. I gave him $20 to say that. I would say that, until I actually saw your process, I won't know exactly what is different, what works, doesn't work. But if you have all those symptoms that we described, where people are working on too many things, they're not working on the right things, that their continuous improvement organization is not connected with their strategy, then I'll say you're not doing Hoshin Planning. A lot of people do, balanced scorecard. You heard of this balanced scorecard approach? We would use balanced scorecard in step 1. And that's as far as balanced scorecard usually takes you, because you come up with a lot of big ideas and stuff, but it never actually breaks it down to the point where the point of action resources get involved and know exactly what they're doing. And to me, that's the fundamental difference. Is a lot of people, I don't care how you come up with the 3 to 5 year Hoshins, right? The breakthrough Hoshins themselves. You can have 3 or 4 different ways of doing that. The question for me is, how do you actually have execution occur against those Hoshins? How do I get everybody involved pulling in the same direction? To me, that's the fundamental difference between Hoshin Planning and any other kind of strategy deployment thing I've ever seen. Good question.
In one of your charts you have where world class is at the very top of the chart, and we've got kind of that staircase going up to it, and then just below that is the competition, and then way below that is the current situation. Mm-hmm. What if we're actually at the head of the competition? What changes in the process, or how would you help that organization accelerate the process and go deliver their Hoshins?
Right. Well, 2 things about that. One is I think, of course, you're very fortunate if you're the leader in your industry. So, because, the view never changes unless you're number 1, right? You've heard that before. The problem with that, though, the bad thing, is that often if you are number 1, you lose that sense of urgency, right? That competitive edge that someone says, well, we're already good enough. Let's just stay barely ahead. Let's just stay barely ahead. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to challenge the organization to say, you know what? If we're 5 points ahead, what keeps us from being 15? What keeps us from being 20? What can we do to actually so cripple the competition that they can't match us, right? They almost stop and decide, we're not going to be in that business anymore. So you have to sort of drive that. I don't want to use words, bloodlust, but you've got to get that passion. Yeah.
But it almost sounds like kill the Russians.
Well, you got to get clever in your messaging. That's right. That's right. Because we definitely don't want to do that.